So, Mavis, hi. Thank
Hi.
you for doing this. I really appreciate it. And I'm especially excited about this because I actually don't know you, and the people I've been interviewing before, I know. And so we're doing this series for people in prison, people who've got out of prison, who we work with. And I know from Bar Patterson, who pointed me in your direction, that you are a three principles practitioner, teacher, sharer, something that I'm going to hear about in a second, because I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself and to say, who are you and what is it you do in the world?
Okay. Well, let's see. What would I tell you? I learned about the principles over 40 years ago now. So, and I consider that the best information I ever got in my life. And I was working at a place called the Bridge for Runaway Youth in Minneapolis, and they had a lot of money for continuing education, but I was getting a little burned out, and but there was a chance to go to the University of Minnesota Graduate School and hear this workshop for a couple of days, and I thought, fine, I'll go. I don't even care who it was. I just 2 days off work, fine, I'll go. So that was when I first heard the principles. It was Roger Mills and two other PhD psychologists from Florida who did the workshop. And about 20 minutes into it, I was listening and I thought, oh my God, it's just our thinking. And I thought the top of my head was going to come off because I had a lot of traditional training for both an undergraduate and graduate school about, you just go into people's pasts and who did what and how come and why. And it was all about trying to find out what was wrong with people. Right? And I didn't even hear much of the rest of it because it was like I just saw all at once, we're just making everything up with our thinking. Oh my God, why didn't somebody tell me that before? It was just, I thought all of a sudden as so simple, but that wore off after a little bit. And I kept thinking, yeah, well, what about this? And what about this? And I kind of threw every exception I could think of at. Well, what about when somebody dies? And what about when you don't have any money? And what about when this happens and this happens? And I thought that couldn't be my thinking. But I always ended up saying to myself, well, yes, but does everybody feel exactly the same way about everything? And I never got to a place where I could answer that with yes. So it must be our thinking, right? And I eventually ran out of things to throw at it and decided, nope, that's it. It's there's nothing wrong with any of us. And it's not that I saw more and more and more, but I saw deeper and deeper how amazing human beings are, and for that matter, all of creation. That there isn't a flaw in it, and we're a part of that. Ergo, we're not flawed. We have a lot of flawed thinking, but we're not flawed. And the more I saw that, the nicer my life got, the easier my work got, the fewer problems I had because I wasn't creating them. And the more just flat out fun I had at my work. Because it turns out I never saw anybody that had anything wrong with them. And if they did, I didn't know how to fix it, but they just never had anything wrong with them. So I'm a mom, I'm a grandma, I'm a great grandma, so I'm older than dirt. I've been around. And I have spent the last 40 years passing this information on to anybody that's interested. And that's turned out to be prisons here in Minnesota, and where else? A juvenile justice program in South Africa. And I've worked with schools and agencies and businesses, individuals and families and couples and so forth, and a lot of athletic teams, and a lot of individual athletes. I don't know why. I come from a jock family. I guess I just speak jock. And besides, athletes know a lot about the zone, this no thought state of mind. Now, what they didn't know is that that's portable, but nonetheless, they've experienced a lot. And so it's easy to teach this to them because they know what that is, that clear-headed, just peaceful place, even though you're going 90 miles an hour on cleats or skates or something. So I've worked with hospitals, and I don't know if there's any place I haven't been, because I don't. When your work is to teach the principles, there's nothing to specialize in. You just go wherever anybody has a head, and that doesn't leave people out. So it's like, it's great. I don't have to say, oh no, I don't work with people like that or that or that. But that doesn't make any difference. It's we're all the same and uniquely different. So that's what I do.
I love that. Go with anywhere where someone's got ahead. That's brilliant. So how come you, like, I mean, were you working with an agency, or you were just working on your own and you just happened to find yourself? There's a lot of places, different places to work in. Like, how did you get into prison? Because I'm curious about, like, what drew you to work in prison?
I got invited.
Okay.
I mean, I don't seek out places to go. I just, somebody said, would you ever go here? Or would you ever go here? Would you ever do that? And I haven't ever come up with a reason not to. So if it happened to be a prison, I would go. And you know what's interesting about wherever you go? You probably already know this, but you find out how alike we all are, no matter what continent we live on, or whether we're in or out, or prisons. You know, prisons come in a lot of forms. It isn't always just being locked up in a building. Sometimes a lot of times it's just being locked up in your head. And we're just so much alike that, you know, when I went to Africa several times, and, you know, I don't speak either Zulu or Kosha, but somehow or other we found a way to understand each other, even if we couldn't speak each other's language. And mostly all that takes is just listening without thinking about it. And that's always just amazing to me, how much you can hear when you're just being present. You're just more interested in hearing somebody else than you are in having them hear you. It's like you just hear a lot. So I don't know how I get anywhere. Somebody says, do you want to come? And I mostly say, yep, I'll do that. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Which I really appreciate, because I'm finding this fascinating.
And I said, okay.
I love that. So, you know, when you were saying at the beginning that you just recognize that there's nothing wrong with anybody, you know, and it can seem too simple, you know, if you've come from a psychology background where you say you've got to go into the past and you've got to go into all this stuff, and then you realize that it's just thought and you're okay and there's nothing wrong with you. How did that translate when you were working in these systems, that you suddenly saw that and then, you know, noticing different results, or just kind of, what was it that shifted or changed with the people that you work with when you realized this?
That's kind of a funny story, because this workshop I told you I went to when I first heard it, when I went back to work on Monday, I thought, what on earth am I going to do? I cannot keep working the way I was working. I can't do another minute of it. And I'm going to have to be straight with these families I'm working with and tell them that. And then I made a little list of people I could refer them to that I thought were really good people, and because I didn't even know how to explain what I'd learned. I understood it, but I remember the first family I walked into at 9 o'clock Monday morning. I said, "All right, I got to tell you something." I went to a workshop that just about blew my head off, and I realized I can't keep working with anybody the way I have been. I can't go back into the past, and I can't keep talking about problems with people, because I learned something that makes that inadequate. And um, and and one of the moms said, "What did you learn?" And I thought, "Oh no." And I said, "Well, see, that's the problem. I don't know how to explain it." And I said, "But I know it's right, and I know it's true, and I don't know how to explain it, and I don't even know how to find out how to explain it, because there weren't any books about it, or there got to be some workshops and stuff, but I hadn't gone to any of those yet." So um, I said, "But I have some names of people that I are really good people. I can refer you to them. You can trust them." And well, that happened in some form or other for the next 2, 3 weeks with people. No one wanted to go to these perfectly wonderful people. They wanted to know what I'd learned, and I couldn't understand these people. I thought, I don't know how to explain this. Why would you want to keep seeing me when I don't? But one of the women called me afterwards. One of the moms of the kids called me, and she said, "I was wondering if you wondered why none of us wanted to leave." And I said, "I certainly do. What is the matter with you?" And she said, "Because we could see something had happened to you." She said, "There was light coming out of you, and you were excited about what you, and we wanted that." Now that made sense to me, because that's how I felt. I felt I felt like, whoa, I wish I could tell people what I heard. All I got to is, "It's about our thinking." Well, that's not going to fly. But um, it was makes me teary to think about it, um, that these people, these troubled people that were worried about their kids and worried about their family and had a lot of problems and so forth, they saw something I didn't even know I was expressing. They they just wanted whatever I heard. They wanted it, and they didn't care if I didn't know how to explain it. And so, excuse me, didn't expect this. Anyway, so as I went along, they kept asking me questions, and I would say, "Well, I think it's like this," and stories would come to my head, and um, analogies would come to my head, and parables would come to my head, and I felt like I was out on the tiniest, slim little branch, and any minute I was going to lose and fall off, right? But I didn't. I it was um, it was being in the zone.
Mm.
And Joe Bailey was a friend of mine. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine, and he was kind of going through some of the same stuff, and we would commiserate, but happily. It's like, "Oh God, I don't know how to talk about this," but we got a little better at it, and a little better at it, a little better at it. But mostly, what kept us going, and certainly what kept me going, is I knew the truth, and it doesn't mean that I didn't keep making up problems, but I would catch myself at it and go, "Wait a minute, this might be my thinking. And turns out that's a really good habit to get into, to catch yourself at making up a problem. At the time, I didn't know that that was a good habit. I just thought I'd forgotten what I knew, but I can't remember your question. Did that answer any of it?
I think so. I can't remember either. I'm just thinking, God, I could learn so much from you. I'd love to be a fly on the wall at in one of your sessions or something, because it's just it's some fun stories.
You know who no matter how clumsy I was, you know who got it the quickest is kids. At the time, there was an artist, a singer, who had a song out called, his name was Bobby McFerrin, and he had a song out called Don't Worry,
Be Happy. Yeah.
That the kids said that was my theme song. That they, because we would talk about what worrying was, that it was just going into the bathroom and looking in the mirror and saying boo, and not remembering it was you, right? So they got it, and they would, in the groups that I did with them, I would talk as best I could about it, and they would get really sleepy, and I would say, I don't know why I knew this at the time, but I would say, that's okay. You can lay down in the pillows, you can shut your eyes, you can do whatever, but stay just this side of sleep, and you'll hear what you know when I'm talking. You'll hear it, and that some of those things are how this has probably happened to you too. How when you're working, you'll hear things come to you, and it's like, who said that? It doesn't feel like it's something that you personally could come up with. Well, that's true, actually. It isn't you personally that comes up with it. It's that divine engineering that knows, just knows. And it's like you're a client in your own session when you're not trying to do anything. You're just letting it come to you, and you're learning at the same time that your clients are learning. And which is why I'm 80 years old, and I don't need to work, but I don't know how to knit or do any of that stuff. And I get more out of passing this on than probably anybody that I'm teaching, because it's like I can hardly wait to hear what I have to say sometimes, because it comes from, it's not me. It's not me. It's the truth that we're made out of, that comes to you when you just get out of your own head. And that's true of everybody. It's not just true of me. It's like the people that are going to watch this, they all know what I know. They just may not know they do, but they do. There isn't some sort of hierarchy of people that get to know the truth, and then the rest of us gotta just get stuck with whatever. Everybody has. It's like I live about 2 miles from the Mississippi River. Yeah, that's a big river. Now, at the top few feet of the river is very busy. Weather affects it. It has waves on it when it's windy, and it's choppy, and it has logs floating down it and boats, and it's busy. But way down underneath, it's very calm, but there's a really strong current, right? That's there all the time, right? It's like us. Personally, we've got all this busy roller coaster drama stuff going on. But underneath all that noise is the truth. And that's when we feel impersonal love. We feel compassion. We're kind. We're determined. We're who we really are. So it's like the top part of the river is its personality. Underneath is what it really is, just like us. So what happens, at least for me with that, and I'm seeing it in most people that learn it, is that we kind of get detached from the drama. We're not real interested in drama. You know, it's kind of boring. But there's nothing boring about that deep current underneath, where we just know what we know, and we know who people really are. And that's who we talk to. We don't mess around with trying to clean up the logs and the drama. We just talk to who they are. That's not complicated. And that's why people at first think it's too easy or too simple. It couldn't work. What if that's why it works? Because it's simple, it's profound, it's true. And then we can, like, and I tell you a story.
Please do.
About, it's about 7 or 8 years ago, one of my favorite people in the world, my oldest brother, got Lewy body dementia and died much too young. And he lived in Seattle, and I would go out there in his last years and spend a week pretty often. And it turned out the last time I was with him, I didn't know it was going to be the last time, but he was in hospice by that time, and he was actively in his dementia most of the time. But I don't know, that was okay. I just listened to him. And I showed up there one day and he said, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here because I'm having some difficulty with my staff and I'd like to talk it over with you." And he used to run big clinics. And so he was thinking that's what was happening here in the hospice. He had some of the people working for him were misbehaving, right? So he wanted to talk about it with me. And so I thought, okay. So I was listening to him, and at one point he stopped and he said, "Is this credible?" And I said, "Not so much." And he started to laugh, just like you did. He started to laugh. And then I started to laugh, and tears were running down our cheeks. And when we finally kind of got it together again, I said, "Jerry, who is it that asked that question?" And he said, "What question?" I said, "You asked, is this credible?" He said, "Yeah, I did that." And I said, "Isn't that interesting that you watched yourself have dementia?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I felt like that was my dementia." And I said, "Well, the person that asked that question, who you really are, doesn't have dementia. You just watched yourself creating from dementia." And we had about a maybe 15, 20-minute conversation about who we really are, that you would never know he had dementia in that conversation. It was just, he was a psychologist, a PhD psychologist. We had this wonderful conversation about who we really are. And then he started getting sleepy and kind of got foggy again. And that was the last conversation I had with him.
Mm.
And I will never forget that a person with dementia, it's possible for them to have a break from it and observe themselves and catch it and see them producing it. Isn't that astonishing?
Amazing.
But what that helped me with is seeing that we can all do that. We can observe ourselves creating personal drama, catch it, and decide whether we want to keep doing that or not. Because we're in charge, right? Now, that's an amazing app. You know, we think our phones are so great. Nothing compared to how we're made. I mean, that is amazing. We can be kind of creating a bunch of drama, and then we can climb up in the cheap seats and get some popcorn and watch her do that, right? And not be attached to that. And just, we can watch that with humor, or sometimes we may watch it with judgment, which we shouldn't do because it doesn't matter. And I mean, don't you think that's an engineering feat? That we have that ability to interrupt ourselves making a mess and decide, nah, man, I don't have time. I'm not going to do that. And in this world right now, it's tempting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
To terrify ourselves and, oh, what if this, and what if this happens, and what if that happens, and we can feel a disaster that isn't even happening in our heads. Like, oh, what if so and so dies? And I mean, it's all understandable, completely understandable. But even in this, nobody is thinking about this world in the same way. For some people, it's a huge, huge disaster. And don't mistake me, it is, we got to take care of this. We got to take this seriously, but we don't have to be terrorized about it all the time. It's like terrorizing ourselves is not the same as taking care of ourselves or anyone else. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So it's so easy for even those of us who've been around this understanding for a long time to say, all right, this is a exception. This requires mental illness. No, it doesn't. No. We need to be still and see the next right step, which is a good idea all the time. But certainly now. I forgot the question you asked. Yeah.
I don't think it was a long time ago. I'm totally absorbed in the conversation. So I don't even know how long we've been talking, but I could go on talking all day. It's fascinating. You have a great way about you, a great storyteller.
Oh, thank you. They come to me. I don't make them up. It's like I started wondering about that analogies would come to me, and things in when I was first trying to pass this on to people. It was part of it was terrifying because I used to believe that you could die from having to stand up in front of people and talk. I used to believe there's a serious chance that you're not going to live through it. And yet I wanted people to know this. So I had to just, okay, I might die, but I got to go out and talk. And once I got out in front of people, everything would kind of shut down except for what I wanted to say. And then little stories would come into my head that I had heard for the first time telling them. And I got so that at first I thought that, well, that is the strangest thing. I never thought of it that way before. And after a while, I got so I relied on that. I counted on it, that I didn't have to know ahead of time how I was going to talk to this particular person or that particular person, that if I just showed up, I could trust that what I needed would show up with me. And that's just science. That's not airy-fairy thinking. You know, that's just the truth. You just show up in the moment, and since we all have everything we need, it'll show up with us. Who thought that up? That's just amazing how well we're made. Just, you know, that we have a brain that has all kinds, everything that's happened to us since day one is stored in there. You'd think our head would, when you're 80, you'd think your head would be like about that big, right? But like we don't have to relearn a lot of stuff, like brushing our teeth and tying our shoes and driving and, you know, all that stuff, because it's there. But we also have the capacity to have a thought come to us that didn't come from our brain. It came to it. How does that work? Oh, there's an app. Is that something? We can have a thought we never had before. It didn't come from memory. It came to us just at the right time. You'd think we'd never worry about anything, knowing that, wouldn't you? But I don't know, sometimes, you know, for a habit like worry, it's never prevented anything. It's never fixed anything. It isn't the same as caring. It isn't the same as being responsible. You wouldn't think anybody would use it. But certainly is popular. I used to be excellent at it. You know, and being excellent at something that never works isn't that great a deal. What else should we talk about?
We got to. I don't even know where we started. So I think that it was. We got a little bit of time left. We got a few minutes. I know we can't keep. We got to. You know, in terms of the amount of. I don't even know how long we've been doing this. I'm like in a different world. It could have been an hour. It could be half an hour. It could be 15 minutes. It could be an hour and a half. So I'm just gonna carry on. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we finish? Is there something? I mean, there's so much wisdom. I feel like I've just on the tip of the iceberg.
I don't know. I'll do this as much as you want. You do it again or do it longer. I'll do it as much as you want.
That'd be good. Let's do another one. That'd be cool.
We can do that.
Yeah.
This can be.
It can be an ongoing. Let's have an ongoing series with Mavis.
Sure,
I think that would be
that.
learning with Mavis.
This is a good use of our time in these times, huh?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's do it. We'll do as much as you want.
It's so nice to hear from you. It really is. It's such a fresh. You have a very fresh, something fresh way of thinking, looking at it, talking about it, and I'm really appreciating it. So I really, really appreciate you doing this, and it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you online, and hopefully at some point we'll be in person. I'll drag you to Portland and get you to the prisons and stuff over here.
I'd love to do it. I'll go anywhere.
One thing you haven't done yet. It's like, okay, well, we got something else on the agenda once we can actually get out of our houses.
Yeah, but isn't it amazing we can do this?
Isn't it? So lucky. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I know, and that wisdom can be shared with so many people, and we're just kind of having a conversation. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm going to stop this recording and then we can just wrap up. But anyway, I really appreciate it, Mavis. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Take good care.